Okay, you've bled and bled your bike's brakes, and your lever or pedal is still soft. To sum up your situation, guys, no one likes a soft lever, and by now you're so frustrated, it's time to get a new bike rather than deal with this brake issue. Whether you say lever or lever, it's time to get firmed up, plus a very special tip on brake fluid at the end of the video. Today on Rod Rides and Wrenches. First, let's understand why your brake lever is still soft after you've vacuum bled or manually bled your brake system. You have probably changed a brake line, removed a caliper, or for some other reason your master cylinder has run dry. So now you're trying to rid the system of those pesky bubbles of air. Vacuum bleeders are great at moving fluid through the brake lines, but can fall short if you have complex caliper passages or trapped air elsewhere in the system. Although you may not see evidence of air in your vacuum bleeder, I'm going to show you one quick final bleed at the caliper that makes a surprising difference even after vacuum bleeding. Remember when bleeding motorcycle brakes to always start at the caliper furthest away from the master brake cylinder first. So that means the left caliper. To clarify, and for the best view of the camera here, I'm going to show you this technique on the right caliper. So assume I've already performed this procedure on the left caliper of our dual caliper front brake system. First, make sure that your bike is completely level and safely stationary. Use a paddock or center stand for best results, and open up the bleeder valve and place your bleeder hose over the valve, but hey, don't install your vacuum pump. Hold the tube upright so no air can get back into the bleeder valve. You should start to see brake fluid slowly fill the line. This simple, slow method works for getting small pockets of air that resist the force of the vacuum. You can also squeeze the lever once there's sufficient volume of brake fluid in the hose that you can't get any air around the bleeder valve when you let that lever back out. A few light taps on the caliper with the plastic end of a screwdriver can also assist freeing the air bubbles trapped in the caliper. You'll typically see the last few bubbles of air come out and up the tube that your brake system was hanging onto even after that vacuum bleed. This happens because of surface tension on the air bubbles, and they can literally stick in lines and calipers like they do in this glass of beer. When you're performing any bleeding procedure, make sure your reservoir is open and you're continually topping off the correct brake fluid for your bike from a clean source, like a brand new bottle. Once you're satisfied that all the bubbles are out, you can remove the hose from the caliper, tighten up the bleeder valve, and pump up the brakes to see if there's any improvement. If this last little bit of bleed isn't getting your lever firm yet, then the problem isn't in your lines, it's in your master cylinder. Air gets trapped behind the inlet port on the master cylinder. Now, this can just be small bubbles and seem rather insignificant. But remember, your motorcycle brake's hydraulic system only moves a small amount of fluid during the stroke of your master cylinder piston. And when the fluid starts to meet resistance, the fluid then compresses the air bubbles if there are any left in the system. This compression of air is what gives you a spongy feel to your brakes and prevents you from getting that hard lever feel that you're looking for. Okay, enough double entendres. Now, spongy brakes can also be the result of a weak or failing rubber brake line, worn master cylinder components like a piston or its O-ring seals. But if you have a bad brake line, you'll typically see a lot of flex in the brake lines when applying the brakes, and may even see a bulge in the line or a split in the outer casing. And a failing master cylinder will usually be found by leaking brake fluid from where the lever connects to the piston. The cure for exiting this air from your master cylinder is to bench bleed, or rather use a bench bleed technique to clear any of these trapped bubbles from the cylinder passage. To start, you'll need to have your bike level and secure. Once you start this process, try to ensure not to move your handlebars. For my example, the bike is in a wheel vise, so I know the bars can't turn. Cover the right handlebar, fairing, dash, plus the gas tank with cloths or shop towels. Unavoidably, there will be some brake fluid that's going to get onto these parts. You'll also need a wrench for the banjo bolt that is on the output port of the master cylinder. This bolt connects your brake lines to the master cylinder. Remember, the goal is to move trapped air out, so pump up the brake lever a few times and hold it in. Now use your wrench to loosen the banjo bolt. You should see fluid seep from the brake lines. Do not let go of your brake lever until you tighten that banjo bolt back up. Go ahead and repeat this procedure until a strong stream of brake fluid is sprayed from the brake lines and master cylinder when applying full brake force and loosening that banjo bolt. If you've rebuilt or are installing a new master cylinder, you may need to remove the banjo bolt altogether and use your thumb or finger to cover the master cylinder outlet to get the brake fluid from the reservoir into the cylinder. Squeeze and pump the lever with your finger over the outlet and then hold the lever down and let fluid out. Replace your finger and repeat. Now, when you can't hold your finger over the outlet when you pump up the brakes, then there's sufficient volume in the cylinder and you can reinstall the brake lines and banjo bolt. Now, you should always ensure that no air has gotten into the brake lines during this procedure by bleeding the calipers as we showed you previously. Again, starting at the left caliper and moving to the right. Remember that most brake fluid does not play nice with painted surfaces, so clean up your calipers with a brake clean and wash your bike thoroughly with soap and water after you've installed the brake reservoir cap. No need to blow your brains out over a soft lever, just bleed the master cylinder and all should be good. If you've learned something today, be sure to give us a thumbs up and feel free to share this video with your forum or subgroup. Thanks for watching, and my final tip for brakes is to always leave a bit of room in the fluid reservoir for expansion and never fill it to the top. The maximum height, unless otherwise stated by your shop manual, is 80 to 90% of the sight glass window. BMW owners in particular need to pay attention, as some bikes should only be filled to 50% of the sight glass window. This maximum brake fluid level would also only be in the case of brand new brake pads being installed. Just remember that brake fluid level is another indicator of how worn your pads are. A low level should mean your pads are also in need of replacement. Too much brake fluid at the reservoir can cause your brakes to drag when the fluid heats up and expands during use. That's it for now. Until next time, be sure to ride safe.